Oh, hey there, you awesome bipeds, quadrupeds, and even the occasional dinosaurs. My name is Little Wolf, and welcome to my den. Go ahead, come on in, but please wipe your paws. And go ahead and take a seat by the fire. The cauldron's always going as usual, and so you can have coffee, tea, or hot chocolate. I've actually had quite a bit of tea lately. I need to go out and get more coffee later on. And I hope you guys have had a good weekend. Mine was actually pretty fun. I watched a couple of bad movies, but I don't know if they're bad because I actually had fun watching them. And I listened to a podcast that I have listened to almost, I would say, religiously since it started. And I got to listen to a couple of radio dramas in my den. And so I thought I would kind of come on and ramble a little bit about those. Now, the first movie I'd like to talk about is one that a friend of mine had helped me watch. And it's ReAnimator, directed by Stuart Gordon, and it stars Jeffrey Combs. And it is definitely a zany, fun little movie, and it's based off of H.P. Lovecraft's story. I think it's The Strange Case of Herbert West, if I'm not mistaken. But let's see here what the Oracle has to say about this movie. Obsessed with overcoming the obstacle of death and determined to vindicate himself by backing up his theory, the ambitious medical student Herbert West arrives in New England after the horrific incident at the Institute of Medicine in Switzerland. Before long, Herbert will pick up where he left off, at first experimenting with a dead feline tissue, and then with fresh human cadavers, taking his septic roommate Dan Kane into joining his audacious project, inevitably as the two young scientists burrow deeper and deeper into uncharted territory. A campus will start brimming with West's reanimated corpses, catching the eye of his arch-nemesis, Dr. Hill, who yearns to take credit for this astounding discovery. The dead will rise again, even with a bit of help. However, can a young reanimator harness the power of his phosphorescent green reagent? And yes, with that little tidbit right there, we can see that there is a medical student named Herbert West, played by Jeffrey Combs, who goes to a new medical school, which is part of H.P. Lovecraft's weird little universe. And he uses this weird neon green liquid to bring back to life his roommate's dead cat, which, when you see the scene that happens in that movie with that cat, is definitely hilarious, and I will not give away too much of it because it's definitely worth seeing if you haven't yet. And this whole movie is definitely worth seeing. And after the cat incident, they go to a mortuary inside the school and look through different cadavers and decide to try and bring one of those back to life, and that definitely does not go as planned. And again, it's another scene where it's a OMG moment and a definitely laugh out loud moment, because so much craziness happens inside of that little area and in such a short amount of span in time. And I'm not really gonna be like most review places where I go deep into movies and deep into who the cast is and what other shows they may have been in, or the directors and what other movies they are. I don't really want to be that kind of a reviewer. I just want to go through and say whether or not I had a good time, and whether or not I think some of the people who follow me will have a good time with the movie too or not. And with that being said, I would highly recommend you watch this movie, especially if you're a fan of movies along the lines of Return of the Living Dead, with its dark humor, because this movie definitely has its laugh out loud moments, and it has its gore moments, and it has definitely some horrific elements to it. Parts of it I could almost see within Pet Sematary, with bringing the cat back to life and how they deal with that in the end of it. Or actually, I'm not even sure if they deal with the cat in the end of it. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch the movie. Oh darn. But it's definitely gonna be a movie that's gonna be rewatchable for me many, many, many times, because I do love my H.P. Lovecraft stories, and his adaptations have been pretty good for the most part from ones that I've seen. Like A Color Out of Space was adapted into The Curse with Will Wheaton, and that's definitely another one you should check out. And I know they recently did another remake of A Color Out of Space, and I still have to hunt that one down. But with ReAnimator, definitely give it a watch if you can find a way to do it. I know you can find it on the tubes if you really want to. That's how my friend showed it to me, and we wound up sitting down and watching it together, and had a really good time doing that. And I know I should really go into a bit more into the movies, and I'm sorry I don't, but these are just things where I would like you to do your own research into the movies and give them a watch if they sound like they would be fun. And like I said with this one, it's definitely a good time, definitely fun, and definitely worth watching. And if you have little youngins around, maybe not one for them unless you really want to traumatize them or get them into weird, twisted, bad movies. But then again, I wouldn't count this as a bad movie. And like I said, the next movie I watched was Cellar Dweller. And this is another weird movie, but it also ties in a bit with ReAnimator because it also has Jeffrey Combs in it. And in another weird twist also, the lady that runs an art school out in the middle of nowhere, for some weird reason, is run by the lady who was the actress who played Lily Monster. And the first time I watched this movie, I sat there and was like, oh my god, she looks so familiar. Why does she look familiar? And I finally had to hit the Oracle and look it up, and it turned out, yes, she was Lily Monster. But with a little quick plot description here. 30 years has passed since a grisly murder/suicide of Colin Childress, creator of the comic book Cellar Dweller, But as often happens to those ignorant of it, comic book artist Whitney Taylor is doomed to repeat history in a most grotesque way. Little does she know that her twisted renderings soon reincarnate the bloody hysteria of Cellar Dweller. Now with this one, it kind of runs a bit into where a horror movie would almost meet like a Looney Tunes type comedy with it, because you have weird little things that get drawn into a picture and then somehow they happen in real life. Like when the cellar dweller is going after a certain lady, a banana peel is drawn into a picture and suddenly just pops into real life. And so when I'm sitting here watching the movie, I'm having so many WTF moments. And the ending of the movie is a bit odd too. But I don't want to go too far into the ending of it because I feel that this is a movie where it really knows that it's not a serious movie, and it knows that the watcher shouldn't take it seriously, and so you can kinda tell that they're having fun making the movie. And so I would say it's at least worth a watch, just to see the weird zaniness that happens within the movie. Because, like they said, at the beginning of it, you get a scene where it has the creator of Cellar Dweller drawing his comic book downstairs of his place. And somehow a young lady is brought into the picture after he draws her. And also the Cellar Dweller, which is a weird, like, hybrid creature of like a werewolf meets a zombie meets a vampire, and it's just really hard to kind of describe what it is, but it's just kind of fun to see the story map itself out inside of the drawings that the artist makes and how the story happens on screen. And so it's kind of like a weird mixture too, where when they make movies they would do storyboards of what they want to have happen within the movie, and that in itself is another artistry, and it's almost comic bookish, where they kind of get an idea of what they want shot on screen. And so seeing it drawn out into a comic book form first, and then seeing it kind of play out in front of your eyes, is definitely a fun time. At least it was for me. And like I said, I don't know if this would be a high recommend to watch, but it's definitely one to kind of add to your list to watch later on if you're not sure what you would like to watch, or if there's nothing else on your whatever streaming service you might be using, or if there's nothing on YouTube being streamed at the time. But it's, yeah, the weird comic adaptation style of the movie is fun. The weird comedy that they put into it of things popping in and out of existence is pretty fun. And I would definitely, like I said, put it on a list to watch. It wouldn't be one you'd want to watch right away. But, maybe grab some kind of hard drink or something like that, or get your friends together, have a weird little gathering or group together if you can, or sit down on Zoom or something and sit down and watch the movie together and just kind of have a good time at what this movie is. And it's definitely probably around like the B grade, C grade of movies. But usually those are the kind of movies I like to watch, because they're movies that not really everyone has seen, and sometimes it has new ideas that really might not be pulled off the best in a movie, but it's one of those areas where it's like, that's a really good idea, but you just didn't bring it to fruition the way most people could. And so, yes, this is definitely a movie to at least put on the back burner, or at some point if you're doing laundry or cleaning up around the house or whatever, just kind of put it on in the background and listen to what's happening. And definitely have some fun with it, because I definitely did. At least up until the end, because the end I feel is a little weak. And like I also said, I started listening to another, or not really listening to another podcast, but it's a podcast that I've listened to for many years now. And they usually come out with a show maybe once a week, or sometimes if it's a holiday, they'll skip a week. And hold on just a moment. Just getting a drink of coffee. Excuse me. But it's called the Midnight Drive-In Podcast. And much like with Weekend Horror Podcast with J.L. Warren, if you guys really like that style where they bring multiple movies to the forefront and sit down and have a discussion about them, which I need to catch up on their shows. I've been really bad with catching up on shows and watching videos and stuff, because I've been kind of busy with my swordsman group and kind of busy doing my own channel. And I know some people have kind of missed me in the chats and have asked me if I'm okay. And yes, I'm okay. I'm just kind of recharging my energy, if that makes sense. Especially after losing a friend of the family and things like that, and just dealing with weird things in life in general. I've been kind of hiding out in my wolf's den on Discord and listening to radio plays and podcasts, and just kind of been laying low for a bit. And with that time, I was able to go back to Midnight Drive-In and listen to a few of their episodes that I had missed. And at the start of their channel, it says, "From the ashes of the last horror cast comes the Midnight Drive-In. Each week, Brian, Doug, and Noah will talk about the craziest, weirdest, and downright insane cult, exploitation, and horror movies." And with these guys, they usually pick two different movies, somehow having a weird tie-in, kind of like with what I was talking about today, with Jeffrey Combs being tied into ReAnimator and Cellar Dweller. But these guys will have like a weird twist in their shows, like, oh, these are weird high school horror movies, and so they'll talk about something like Horror High and tie it into another movie where it has to do with high school with horror. I think that one was Class of 1999, I think. And they are just really fun to listen to, and the movies they talk about sometimes are ones that you might have to dig a bit to find, or you can find them readily on Google or on Amazon. But they are definitely a fun group of people to listen to, and a lot of the movies I have found to watch, I've found by listening to them. and just the banter that they'll have back and forth with all three of them is really fun, because usually it'll wind up where two people either really hate the movie and one person really loves the movie, and so they'll go back and forth over why the movie is bad or why they think it's good and the different reasons behind it. And right now, as far as I can tell, they have 172 episodes that are out. And so they've been doing this for quite a while, and so there's a nice backlog of episodes that you can listen to, and I would highly recommend you go through and at least look for ones that you can probably think you'd like to listen to. Let's see here. One of the later episodes that they just did had Nosferatu the Vampire and Schizoid, and that was a fun listen for me. And they also had The Hunger and Innocent Blood, Firewalker and River of Death, Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. So they go through a whole weird just list of movies, and they have many more to come, because they recently had a listener send them a long list of movies that they could show and put together. And I do not really see this podcast ending anytime soon. And I really hope they don't, because they're definitely a highlight of my week usually. And much like Week in Horror, when I can get the chance to sit down and watch that or listen to it, they just the banter of going back and forth of whether the movie is good or not, what makes it good, what makes it bad, what makes it unwatchable. It's just so much fun, and you feel like you're sitting down with a friend or a group of friends and talking about movies that you like, or TV shows, because towards the end of it they'll go through an area where it's them talking about things that they've watched that week. Like recently they sat down and watched Spaced, which from what I understand is Simon Pegg's and Nick Frost's show before they became really big, if I'm getting that right. And so most of the shows usually run from 1 hour maybe to hour and a half to sometimes 3 hours, but it's definitely a fun time to sit down and listen to a couple of movies you maybe haven't seen or you have seen and it's been a while, or it's your favorite movie and you want to see what they do with it. And one of the other kind of cool things is they have a female voice who introduces the movies and throws in her quick little, not even 2 cents, but 1 cent. But it's done by a lady who has a show called 1313 Nocturnally, and she does just a whole bunch of different radio type dramas of horror shows that she likes, and she's made her own plays of them. And right now the name is escaping me, and they would probably kick me in the tail if they knew that I had forgotten her name. But it was just kind of a cool thing when I heard that she was the one that was doing the openings for them. And I know she's also done an audio book of a weird little book called Dead Mech, which is a story where they have mech robots that fight zombies. And the book is kind of confusing when you read it because it really doesn't say which characters are talking, and it kind of jumps around a bit. But it's definitely a fun listen to, just to hear her voice as the person reading the story. And now I'm kind of rambling again, I know. It's part of what I do. Because my brain will just start talking about one thing and then get sidetracked with a different little tidbit of information that has to go with it, and then sidetrack along to another weird story, and that's just kind of how I am. And as I had said before, it's definitely worth a look, and I will put a link in the description of the show for that. And like I also said, I had been spending some time in my den on Discord listening to, at the time I was listening to different music just to kind of blow off some steam and just kind of recharge my batteries. But then I also found that I could play radio plays. And last night with a couple people in my den also, we listened to The Hitchhiker's Guide radio adaptation and War of the Worlds, which, like I said in my first video, is one of the first radio plays I ever listened to, and I just fell in love with it. And I can probably recite it word for word while I'm listening to it. That's how many times I've listened to it. And I had such a good time just hanging out with my friends and listening to it. And they had a good time too listening to it with me, and I would really like to thank them for it. And there was Skydiver Tanner, Sir Dark Steve, Micro Raptor, Surf popped in there for a little bit to listen to it with me. And I mean, it's War of the Worlds. With that radio play when it first came out, it caused a nationwide scare when it happened because people forgot they were listening to a radio program, and it definitely scared a bunch of people. And that kind of history with it definitely makes it more fun. And I can kind of see why they would forget that they're listening to a radio play, because at certain points they'll have a quick little break that they're saying, and they'll play a few moments of music and then cut back into the play again. Or they would cut away to somebody doing an interview on site, so to speak, of what is happening. And so, yeah, I can kind of see how people would sit down and forget that they're listening to a radio play. And at some point in the future, if I ever develop something like Alzheimer's or something like that, I would want my friends to sit down and play this, and don't tell me it's a radio play. Just have some fun with me. I have a weird, twisted sense of humor, and a lot of you know that. And I know I kind of rambled on about a couple of movies and a podcast and a few radio shows, but it's kind of what I did this weekend. And I hope you guys had a good weekend, and I know it's Monday, and I know it's sometimes tough for a lot of you, and I hope just listening to me ramble about movies or podcasts or radio shows helps you get through your day a little bit better. Just sit back, relax, and have some fun. Because that's what I did, and that's what I do with my channel, and I hope it helps you. And so with that being said, definitely give ReAnimator a watch. Maybe give Cellar Dweller a watch. Definitely go listen to the Midnight Drive-In and Weekend Horror, because they're another podcast that does the same type of thing. And definitely, if you get a chance, listen to War of the Worlds, or even The Hitchhiker's Guide, because that was definitely a good time too. And that's something I would kind of like to do with my den at some point, if I do talk about a radio program like X-1, or Dimension X, or Dragnet, or something like that. I know that I could probably play a couple of episodes in my den, and give you guys a sample of what they're like. And it would be a good way to hang out with my friends and just have a good time. And with that being said, as I said before, which I'll probably say a few more times, thank you for coming to my den. Thank you for hanging out with me. And thank you for listening to me babble, because I can definitely geek out on these kind of things. It's stuff I love, and I just want to share it with people. And you bipeds, quadrupeds, and dinosaurs are definitely my friends and family. And I just want to help you find good movies, decent movies, movies that are so bad they're good, and there are some of those in the queue to come up soon. And I would count those as guilty pleasures, because they're movies that when I'm watching them and somebody walks in on me, I'd suddenly have to go WTF and suddenly explain what's happening on screen. So, with that, let's go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you again for coming and hanging out with me and listening to me ramble and babble about movies and things like that. And I just hope you guys have a good week, a good Monday. And welcome to February, and it's almost Valentine's Day, people. Start buying things for your loved ones or for yourself, because let's show the people you love that you love them, even though you should be doing that type of a thing every day. And buy yourself something too, because if you don't love yourself, it's hard to love other people. And remember, we live on one planet. We have to share it. So let's at least be civil. So until next time, I love all of you, and the cauldron will always be on. My den will always be open, and I'll always have an ear to bend if you need to. Like, subscribe, and just hang out and have fun. I love you all. Goodbye, you awesome bipeds, quadrupeds, and even the occasional dinosaurs.